Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating, totally different perspective on a massive global news story. We've all seen the headlines, right? The recent Samsung labor disputes and union strikes. And normally, we look at these kinds of events through a super traditional lens: economics, profit margins, labor laws, that sort of thing. But today, we're going to flip the script. We are going to impartially unpack a highly unique, deeply philosophical analysis of these disputes, based on a really compelling source lecture. And just to be clear, our goal here isn't to take a side between management and the union. Instead, we're exploring a thought-provoking framework that suggests the root of this whole conflict goes way deeper than just paychecks.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. First, surface and hidden sides. Second, essence of money and energy. Third, transition to researcher. Fourth, corporations as social schools. And finally, number 5, third-gen management tasks. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Surface and hidden sides, the root of the conflict.
So if you've been tracking the news, the immediate narrative is intense. We're talking union strikes at literally one of the world's most powerful tech giants. Workers are demanding a fair distribution of profits, and the tension has spiked to the point of threatening extreme actions, like totally shutting down factories. On the surface, it looks exactly like a classic battle over capital. You've got management wanting to retain earnings for growth, and labor wanting a fair slice of the pie they helped bake. But is the Samsung strike really just about money? According to our source material, the answer is a resounding no. The source diagnoses the root cause here not as a simple dispute over bonuses, but as a massive systemic failure in human development. The argument is basically this: if the structural environment was right, and if workers had been properly guided, they wouldn't just be out there demanding cash. The anger we're seeing? It's actually a symptom of deep stagnation.
Just think about the number 30 for a second. Our source points out that a lot of these workers have spent 30 years inside a massive corporate structure, fundamentally just following orders. They have treated 3 whole decades of their lives for a paycheck, but without any real mentorship or guidance on how to actually grow as individuals. And the tragedy, according to the source, is that if these workers were to step outside those corporate gates today, many of them are completely unprepared to secure their own futures. They haven't been developed into independent, thriving thinkers. They've kind of just been kept as cogs in the machine. And it's that deep, maybe even unarticulated realization of personal stagnation that is the hidden side fueling the extreme demands of the strike.
Moving on to Section 2, essence of money and energy, a philosophical view.
Now, what's really interesting about this next idea is how it explains why simply handing out bigger bonuses won't fix that underlying anger. We have to look at how our source philosophically defines money itself. They propose this wild metaphor. Money is essentially circulating energy. In fact, the source notes this really cool linguistic tie in Korean, where the word for money actually relates to the concept of turning or circulating. So here is the absolute crucial philosophical point. If individuals demand this energy, money, without possessing the fundamental inner wisdom, or mass, to manage it, they will inevitably lose it. It's like if you lack the intellectual and spiritual weight to anchor that energy, it just dissipates into thin air. You might get a massive payout, but without the wisdom to utilize it, you end up losing it to bad investments, scams, or just poor life choices. Therefore, the ultimate grievance shouldn't be, hey, give us more money, but rather, why haven't you helped us build the inner wisdom to handle our futures?
Section 3. Transition to researcher, a structural shift.
So, the core solution proposed by our source requires a complete, ground-up paradigm shift away from the traditional corporate hierarchy. They argue that we need a structural transition from the concept of a laborer to a researcher. To really wrap our heads around this, let's look at the historical timeline the lecture maps out. Back in the 1980s, we saw the strong emergence of labor unions. Then, throughout the 1990s, organizations experienced massive, rapid physical growth. But the 2000s, the turn of the millennium, is identified by the source as an absolutely critical, yet entirely missed transition point. As society shifted into this highly educated, knowledge-based era, megacorporations should have evolved right along with it. The source argues that at the millennium, companies like Samsung should have boldly eliminated the laborer role altogether. And the contrast between these two roles reveals exactly why identity matters so much. The laborer is defined by a strictly transactional mindset. Taking orders, doing physical or repetitive tasks, and demanding pay in return. It's inherently a stagnant identity. But the researcher, that is entirely self-directed. A researcher is constantly questioning, continually growing, and actively contributing real intellectual value to society. The source makes the case that when you take a highly educated workforce and classify them as laborers, you are forcing them into a tiny box of just demanding pay for time. But if you elevate them to researchers, well, you unlock their potential for continuous evolution.
So what would a researcher culture actually look like in practice? The source outlines some pretty amazing cascading benefits. First off, it means reclassifying every single role. Yes, even janitors become researchers of the corporate environment. Security guards become researchers of safety and infrastructure. By simply making this shift in identity, you spark voluntary teamwork. People just naturally want to solve problems. The source even playfully notes that when people are truly treated as researchers, they start brainstorming off hours, maybe even coming up with ideas in their sleep. The end result is self-operating organizational growth. You no longer have to micromanage through rigid commands because the organization grows organically. Everyone is genuinely invested in finding better ways to do things.
Which brings us to Section 4, Corporations as Social Schools, the Bigger Picture.
Now, if everyone in the company is a researcher, then what exactly is the company itself? Our source fundamentally redefines the very purpose of a megacorporation like Samsung. Look, it's really easy to look at a tech giant and assume its greatest assets are its semiconductor foundries, its thousands of patents, or its massive cash reserves. But the source argues something completely different. Samsung's true asset is the concentrated energy and high-quality human resources of the nation's citizens. Think about it. Samsung became a top-tier global entity because the public, through immense effort and education, literally poured their best and brightest minds into the company. Because of that, the company owes its very existence and success to the energy of the public. It doesn't just belong to the shareholders. It is deeply, profoundly indebted to the society that built its workforce.
And that leads us to this incredibly profound quote from the source. A corporation is a massive social school and research institute. The source claims that these massive entities exist primarily to educate and elevate their people. The ultimate goal isn't just churning out microchips, it is producing global leaders. The lecture actually ties this back to the traditional philosophy of Hangik Ingan, which is this beautiful ideal of broadly benefiting all of humanity. According to this framework, if a corporation fails to act as a school that elevates its employees to benefit the world, it is literally failing its cosmic and societal duty.
Section 5. Third-gen management tasks. Earning respect.
Obviously, this places a massive amount of pressure squarely onto the shoulders of the leaders at the top. We're talking specifically about executives like Samsung's chairman Lee Jae-young and what they must do to navigate this current crisis. Let's look at how this corporate evolution builds across generations. The source outlines this fascinating three-generation rule of corporate success. Step 1 is the first generation. These are the founders who take the crazy risks and lay down the initial path. Step 2 is the second generation. Their job is pure, aggressive expansion. They're the ones building out the physical footprint of the company globally. But Step 3, the third generation, which is exactly where we are right now, faces an entirely different beast. Their job is not just to build more factories, it is sophisticated operation. And most importantly, it's about earning genuine respect.
So how exactly does a corporate leader earn that kind of respect? The source illustrates this through 4 expanding spheres. It absolutely has to start from the inside out. First, you have to earn the respect of the family, meaning the internal employees in the corporate workforce. Second, society. Third, the nation. And finally, humanity as a whole. The source argues that when a third-generation leader successfully earns respect across these dynamic spheres by acting as a true societal school, it creates this impenetrable shield for the company. A corporation universally respected by its nation can quite literally never be toppled.
But here's the catch, and the source makes a very clear concluding assertion about this. The current generation of leadership is struggling because they lack the necessary wisdom to navigate these crises alone. You can't just stumble your way into this level of societal leadership. True leadership, according to this philosophy, requires active guidance from a master or teacher, someone who can help leaders unlock higher wisdom, see way beyond quarterly profits, and understand this much larger, complex societal picture. The strikes are happening, the source suggests, purely because leadership hasn't yet found the wisdom to elevate their workforce. So, what does this all mean? We've looked at these strikes not just as a standard fight over money, but as a glaring symptom of a workforce practically crying out for growth, and a corporate structure that completely missed the window to become a true social school. And it leaves us with a fascinating, really provocative thought to end on today. If, as our source argues, megacorporations are actually meant to be vast schools for human evolution, are we, as a society, finally ready to graduate from being mere laborers? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Keep questioning the surface narrative, and keep learning. Catch you next time.